Reactions trail Ramaphosa cover-up. Allegations report South Africa's opposition party, Democratic Alliance, demands snap polls over Ramaphosa scandal. Plus, Senegal MP slaps female lawmaker, sparking parliament brawl. I'm Olumide Macaulay. In light of this scathing independent judicial report, which found prima facie evidence of misdeed by South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa over money theft at his Fala farm, the African National Congress National Executive Committee is meeting in Johannesburg to present their position on the matter. After a long-awaited speech to the nation last night by the president, it was the presidential spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, who spoke to the media. Magwenya says President Cyril Ramaphosa does not lack confidence in his own caucus to shield him from having to face an impeachment inquiry, but he's having to consult widely on his options, not for personal benefit, but in the best interest of the country.
The President appreciates the urgency of this issue. The President appreciates the enormity of this issue, what it means for the country, the stability of government. And as a result of that, he is still processing the report, but in that exercise, he's also engaging a number of role players and stakeholders across the governing party, different levels of the governing party, at different levels of the alliance, and he's engaging a broad range of stakeholders. And this is in appreciation of, as I said, the enormity of the matter. We are in an unprecedented and extraordinary moment as a constitutional democracy as a result of the report, and therefore whatever decision the president makes, that decision has to be informed by the best interest of the country, and that decision cannot be rushed and cannot be taken in haste.
South Africa presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya. Reactions and speculation have been rife about South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa and his future at the helm of affairs after a panel report found preliminary evidence he may have committed serious misconduct. The inquiry centers on the alleged theft of millions of dollars of cash from the millionaire president's Fala farm in 2020, which came to light in June and has been dubbed the Farmgate scandal. The theft has raised questions about how Ramaphosa, who came to power on the promise to fight graft, acquired the money and whether he declared it. The president has denied any wrongdoing and has not been charged with any crimes.
He steps down or he gets... I really wouldn't think that would be a bad idea, because he knew that he was doing something wrong and all of that.
If the law needs to take its course, it should. Yes, it should. Like anybody else, justice must be served at the end of the day.
Crime is crime, but then I've never been one of those who believes that our leaders should be impeached or something. Maybe a disciplinary action or something, but to be incarcerated or something is not what I agree with. But corruption is still corruption. Crime is crime. He has to answer for it.
The big lines are already drawn. Like, we've known the factions within the ANC. We've known there have been people within the movement themselves who have been, questioning all this conduct and everything. And this is the right opportunity for them to raise their voices louder than before. But also, I believe Cyril Ramaphosa has got quite a strong faction and backing behind him. So it will be a tug of war, but which is definitely, I think, he's going to win.
I think it's a very troubling moment for our government as well as for the governing party. And I hope we're going to bring all efforts to bear to assure the people of South Africa and of the continent that we respect the Constitution of South Africa as well as the rule of law.
South Africa's opposition Democratic Alliance, DA party, plans to table a motion in Parliament calling for an early election as President Cyril Ramaphosa grapples with a scandal that has the potential to cost him his job. The president has been accused of covering up a $4 million theft from his farm in 2020, including kidnapping and bribing the burglars into silence. The country's parliament is set to examine a report on the scandal and decide whether or not to launch impeachment proceedings next week. DA leader John Steenhuisen says the country cannot leave it up to the ruling party to choose the future of the country, referring to the upcoming ANC conference where Mr. Ramaphosa will seek a second term as a leader of the ruling party. The motion for an early election will need a simple majority of 50% plus one of the National Assembly to vote for the dissolution of the government, which will then trigger an early election, he added. Meanwhile, South Africa is on tenterhooks as the top leadership of the governing ANC party meet behind closed doors to debate the scandal engulfing President Cyril Ramaphosa over his response to a robbery 2 years ago. There's been intense speculation he will resign, but ANC Chairman Gwede Mantashe says he doesn't think President Ramaphosa should resign, adding that he wasn't a liability to the party, and the full process must be allowed to unfold at the meeting. Cyril Ramaphosa, the anti-apartheid champion who became one of South Africa's wealthiest businessmen and then its most powerful politician, has been battling for his political survival over allegations of serious misconduct. He took on the top job in 2018, vowing to root out corruption and fix the economy. Ramaphosa was the leading negotiator for the African National Congress, ANC, during talks that led to a peaceful end to apartheid in 1994, which enabled Nelson Mandela to become South Africa's first black president. To other news, but staying in South Africa, thousands of South Africans have been demonstrating over the imminent parole release of a man who killed an anti-apartheid leader, Chris Hani, in the 1990s. The prospect of Janus Wallace walking free has unleashed a wave of emotion in the still deeply divided country. Wallace assassinated Hani on Easter Sunday in April 1993 in Hani's driveway. Wallace, with South African Conservative Party leader Clive Derby-Lewis, had planned and executed the murder of Hani, South African Communist Party Secretary General and leader of the African National Congress Armed Wing. And Hani was a highly respected politician and activist working to end apartheid rule in the country. His death nearly plunged the country into civil war, and tempers were only calm when ANC leadership addressed the nation and when the apartheid government agreed to terms of the transition to democracy. Wallace, a Polish citizen, was sentenced to live in prison and has to date served 29 years of his sentence after many appeals. Was granted parole by South Africa's apex court, the Constitutional Court, last week.
Somehow they knew that by assassinating Chris, it might derail the negotiation process, and we might not get to the elections. And if we have civil war, then that means everything collapses.
Leave the minister, I don't deal with ministers, I'm dealing with courts. I've been in court in and out, and Wallace has lost all the cases. If my husband was not killed, we would never have had elections. Mandela, after my husband was murdered, said to the clerk, for us to stop this, give us election date.
Ms. Hani's widow was present at these proceedings, and she has made it very clear time and time again that she does not support the release of Wallace on parole. However, I think the court is very constrained to what the legislation actually says. If under the circumstances, the factors point towards a release, then the court has to do that, because what the Constitution does is it requires a balance between the interests of the victim and the interests of the accused. So our Constitution actually recognizes the rights of detained persons, the rights of accused persons, and this is something that the court has to do. There's a public outcry over this decision. People feel like the Constitution has failed them because it's letting go of someone who murdered a beloved hero, a beloved activist, and yet the court is actually constrained to following legislation. If a decision by the executive is not rational, the court has to set it aside. That is what the Constitution says, that is what legislation says, and so it has to do that.
And we'll be speaking with Channels Television South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia in Johannesburg after the break on President Cyril Ramaphosa's current political situation. And still ahead on the program, aggrieved property owners as federal government for compensation after losing land to the second Niger Bridge. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Network Africa, and we turn our attention once again to the political scandal rocking President Cyril Ramaphosa, which is now being called the Farmgate. And joining us is the South Africa Bureau Chief of Channels Television, Betty Dibia. Betty, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you, Lumidi. Thank you.
What is the background on the president's current situation?
Well, you've said it all. Money was stolen from a private property, his farm. A lot of money that shouldn't have been there, hard currency, dollars. According to the president's testimony, we've been hearing $4 million. But in his own testimony, he talked about $580,000 US being proceeds, according to him, from sale of buffalo to a Sudanese businessman. In every way you look at it, $580,000 US in cash stored in a home is wrong on so many fronts. So that's the beginning of the problem. And this was laid bare by a former spy chief who laid a criminal complaint against the president, and investigations began. And now the three legal experts appointed by Parliament to look into the allegations found him wanting that his testimony should be approached with caution. So they found that there's evidence to show that he violated the Constitution, as well as what they call PRECA Act, which is the Prevention and Combating of Corruption Act of the country, and some aspects of the Constitution that govern the conduct of members of cabinet and deputy ministers. The president is at the head of the cabinet in the country. So that's where we are now. Everyone is saying that he should resign. Some are saying he shouldn't. I guess his personality is helping him as well. He's seen as a good man, but the opposition is calling for his head, and some members of the ANC as well. We expect that report submitted Wednesday night to Parliament to be debated on Tuesday, that's the 6th of December, to see whether, even if it's put to a vote, if we want to go there, the ANC still has the numbers to defeat that impeachment vote. So maybe impeachment is the least of his problems or his worries. But the way he is being perceived now, or he will be perceived going forward, is maybe some of the things worrying him. And some are saying he was actually prepared to resign. But the ANC and many people around him may have talked him into not speaking. That's why you saw Vincent Magwenya there speaking last night. We expected a speech from the president, and some said he was about to read a resignation speech or something, but that didn't happen. Now that ANC meeting, ANC National Executive meeting you had referred to earlier, was supposed to hold yesterday, was moved to today. Now it's been abandoned. And the executive committee has delegated the National Working Committee to look into the report, study the report, and then the bigger committee will meet by that or before the 6th of December, which is the same day the Parliament is expected to debate that report by the impeachment committee.
You preempted my next question, which was the official position of the African National Congress, to which the president is a member, and for which there is maybe a crisis of leadership because of this issue. But now there's a delay of about 24 hours on an announcement from the president from yesterday. I think you're alluding to that to today. What do you know about that? Why and what might he be expected to say?
There's a lot of speculation. No one knows. This delay, probably they're trying to buy time to find how to wriggle out of what's been said or what's being said as well, and maybe how he can probably challenge the report of this three-member panel that submitted this report, or issues to raise. But nobody really knows. But the body language from here, the president hasn't said anything since the report was handed over. The statement that was read, and it's been his spokesperson speaking all along, saying the president is studying it and will do everything in the interest of the country. So I can't really say. And the ANC hasn't exactly given out a position. This emergency meeting of the executive committee didn't happen anymore. So we don't really know the position, but by the 6th, I'm sure the ANC will know what it's going to say and how to go about handling the president.
If President Ramaphosa has to step aside, he'll be the second successive leader in such a position. Yet, a party leadership conference is due later this month. Is there a clear succession plan should this transpire?
Well, make that the third for different reasons. Of course, you had Thabo Mbeki in 2008 or so, and you had Zuma. Mbeki and Zuma were recalled. In this case, he hasn't been recalled, and it's for different reasons, as I said. So if for some reason he decides to resign, he has a deputy. A lot of people are worried about the person of the deputy president, David Mabuza. He has quite a reputation, rightly or wrongly. He hasn't said anything as well. He was supposed to address the AIDS conference yesterday, but he didn't. Pitch, the health minister, handled that for him. But people are worried about, but there's a process. The president in South Africa is elected in parliament. So if the ANC brings up David Mabuza to be the president to finish the term, which is supposed to end in 2024. That's when the next general elections will be, or the next general national elections. If the ANC brings him up, they will nominate him in parliament, and that will be put to a vote. But as I said, the person of David Mabuza, I don't know, there are different ways that people look at him. So people are looking at so many other options. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We don't know how this will end. So we're just watching to see what will happen. But impeachment has a lot of implications as well. When you're impeached in South Africa, you get no benefits as a former president and all that. I'm sure he will try to avoid that. But as I said, he may not be worried because the ANC has 57.5% number of seats in parliament. The parliament is 400 seats. So that's like 230 seats. And you require 266 seats. That's 2/3 of parliament for that impeachment vote to go through. So he may not be too worried about that, even if you had dissenting voices within the ANC. But we'll see how it goes. They're looking at so many other options. Some even threw up former president Halima Motlanthe, who finished the term of Thabo Mbeki, but he's already said, no, I'm not going back there. So, but let's see what happens on Tuesday next week.
To another issue of national interest, Betty, as far as the Hani case is concerned, this is a man who is due to be paroled, but thousands are against that. What's the latest on that front?
The Constitutional Court had said within 10 days of the ruling, which the 10 days was yesterday or the day before, he should have been released on parole, that he's shown remorse and all the other requirements. But on Tuesday night, he was stabbed in prison. So he's receiving medical treatment and he wasn't released. He hasn't been released so far. Correctional Services has said that once they get the green light from the medical services, then they will know what to do to let him go. Meanwhile, his widow that you saw there, Dipo Hani, and SACP, that's the South African Communist Party, of which Chris Hani was a part. They've filed an application, a rescission application to that court to rescind its decision regarding the parole. I'm not quite sure how far that will go, but that's the latest thing. But as we stand, the ruling of the Constitutional Court still stands for him to be granted parole. And where he will be serving parole for the next 2 years is the issue. But Home Affairs has granted him stay in the country for now to do that. But his lawyer is not quite happy about it, saying they didn't apply for any for that, for Home Affairs to grant him that. They wanted him to go back to Poland, which is his country, to serve or just free him. But many of the people protesting and not having that, the ANC and the alliance partners, as well as the economic freedom fighters.
So yet another developing story in South Africa. We look forward to see the next episode. Thank you so much, Betty Dibia, our South Africa
Thank you very much.
Bureau Chief.
Thank you, Lumidi.
You're watching these television images showing a violent brawl breaking out in Senegal's parliament yesterday after a male opposition lawmaker slapped a female politician in the face. The outbreak comes after growing acrimony between ruling and opposition politicians since the July legislative election, in which the ruling party lost its comfortable majority amid concern President Macky Sall will seek a third term in 2024. During a budget presentation, opposition MP Masata Sam walked over and slapped Amy Ndiaye Gnibi of the ruling Beno Bok Yaka BBY coalition, setting off a flurry of scuffles, physical altercations. Gnibi threw a chair back at Sam before another MP tackled her to the floor. It didn't end there. The session was suspended as lawmakers came to blows, blame and insults. Sam was addressing the assembly about comments Gnibi made over the weekend, during which she criticized a spiritual leader opposed to Sall potentially running for president again. Gnibi scoffed at his remarks and declared she did not care, after which Sam walked over and hit her in the face. Now, property owners on the right-of-way of the Second Niger Bridge, we're in Nigeria now. The Second Niger Bridge project have appealed to the federal government to make good on its promise to pay them a compensation. According to the group, promises the federal government made are yet to be fulfilled 5 years down the line. They're suggesting that the proceeds from the Sani Abacha loot, meant for the purpose of the total completion of the Second Niger Bridge, be used to settle outstanding compensations. The Second Niger Bridge, one project many Nigerians have been looking forward to, is near completion. But some persons have had to sacrifice their property for the project to come to fruition. Properties within the right-of-way corridor leading to the Second Niger Bridge, including phases 2A, Akwe through Asaba, Ibusa, Akwanam, and phase 2B Obosi through Nkwo, Umoji, Ogidi, Ogbunike to Enugu Expressway in Anambra State, were compulsorily acquired by the federal government for the purpose of constructing the access road to the bridge. 5 years down the line, owners of these properties are aggrieved. They expressed their displeasure in a protest where they claim the government is yet to pay compensation after promising to do so. They're here at the premises of the Federal Ministry of Works and of Housing in Asaba, the Delta State capital.
They told us that they have compulsorily acquired our properties and we should not go there again. For the past 5 years, nothing has been said, nothing has been done.
We are here today to tell the president that we have not been compensated and we want a compensation.
A widow among the protesters narrates how difficult life has been for her since she was asked to vacate the property.
I am suffering. Since 2014, my husband died. No money to feed my children. No school to pay money to pay school fees for my children. I am suffering. I built that house. I cannot do anything with it. No money. Nothing. I cannot stay in the barrack continuously. I want to live for 5 years. Nothing is happening.
After some minutes, staff from the Ministry of Works and Housing, who refused to speak with journalists, received their letter of complaint.
As it is now, I can't receive it. I'm in housing.
Okay, you're in what?
I am in housing. I came from housing.
Okay.
So if it's for housing, I receive housing.
It's for works. This housing, this one for housing. We have two. This for housing.
I receive housing.
Yes.
The second Niger Bridge is one project many believe will help reduce the traffic on the older bridge. But for these ones that have sacrificed their property for the common good of all, a roundtable discussion is suggested to be necessary in order to achieve a win-win situation. Congo, the Congolese army has accused M23 rebels of killing about 50 civilians in the eastern town of Kinshasa. It comes amidst reports of mass killings following the resumption of fighting, with a ceasefire agreed on last week appearing to be collapsing. The rebel group has denied the allegations against them as baseless, saying it has never targeted civilians. Thousands of people are fleeing the fighting between the rebels, government forces and allied militia in different parts of the North Kivu province. Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo agreed at talks in Angola that a ceasefire will take effect last Friday. The M23 said the truce did not concern them as they were not invited to the talks. Rwanda denies allegations that it backs M23. That's Network Africa Today. Thank you for watching. I'm Olumide McCall.